Hey everybody, this is my 125-gallon tank, and it used to have a huge canopy of green floating water sprite in there. It went almost from one end of the tank to the other. It was absolutely gorgeous and I loved it. I unfortunately did something that wound up killing a big chunk of it off, and as I was starting to try to grow it back, I wound up introducing this spotted tilapia here into the tank. And that was pretty much the end of any hopes I had for keeping any plants in this tank. I didn't realize it at the time, but the spotted tilapia is a voracious plant eater and has pretty much destroyed every remnants of plant I had in this tank, except for this. I can never remember what that's called, but that's still kind of hanging on barely back there. And I do have this little sword that's sort of kind of limping along and hanging on in this tank. Other than that, I've got nothing in this tank plant-wise anymore. I did throw some floating water sprite in the other day just to get some stuff back in the tank, and you can see it's over here, but that's already getting nibbled at and worked on, and it doesn't even really have any roots established yet, so that's probably going to wind up being gone before it ever has a chance to start developing a root system. But we can always hope for the best. In the meantime, I'm doing two things to try to get this tank replanted, or to get some green back in this tank, because I just really don't like having tanks that don't have a lot of plants going on in them, except for my native tank. I actually prefer my native tank to not have any plants in it, but that's a different scenario. At any rate, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to plant this. It is a El Nino fern, and it's a pretty good sized one, and I'm hoping that the tough leaves on the fern will be more than this spotted tilapia wants to chew on, and maybe I can get it to establish that way. The other thing I plan on doing involves some Java Fern that I have pulled from another one of my tanks, and right now I'm treating it. So let's go over into my bathroom I've got down here in the basement, and I will show you what I use the shower for down here. And this is it. The tank is actually a quarantine tank, and I'm doing something different with this quarantine tank than I do with my other quarantine tank. So I will be doing a video on that specifically here in the very near future. I'm going to be talking about this quarantine tank and what I've got in there. Today, however, we're going to be simply focusing on this bucket. And what this bucket is a bucket full of water and various plants that I've either trimmed or removed from other tanks, and it's a bunch of them. I got lots and lots of Java Fern in there. I've got the floating water sprite in there, and a couple of other little odds and ends that I have pulled from other tanks. I've got an air stone going in there, and this cord here is actually a 250-gallon-per-hour power head that I've got in there, just making sure everything circulates. And the reason I'm doing that is because we're going to be treating with this again, and hopefully I will be able to kill it off in such a high concentration here in this bucket. One of the reasons I have cyanobacteria in so many of my tanks, if you're a regular viewer, you know that that's an ongoing issue with me. And it's simply because I'm always transferring stuff from tank to tank. I'm moving fish or I'm moving plants. The idea that I'm using my dip net from one tank to the next and my siphon equipment, that's kind of beside the point. When you actually take plants out of a tank and put it in another tank, that's where my contamination comes from. So I'm hoping if I can treat this stuff thoroughly enough and really get a lot of the cyanobacteria killed off of it, it will be good enough that I'll be able to just go ahead and put this in some of my other tanks. And the one we're going to start with is my 125, because most of what's in that bucket is Java Fern, and I think that's going to be tough and durable enough to withstand the attention of that spotted tilapia. So give me a few minutes. I'm going to get some of this stuff put in the tank, and then we'll go over and have another look at what it looks like with all the plants in there. Alright everybody, there you go. Now I gotta say, I like it a lot, but apparently the fish do too. It seems to be a big hit already, especially with my Synodontis eupteris there, my African featherfin squeaker. Of course, now that I've got the camera going, he's completely stopped, but just a few moments ago, he was cruising the whole tank. He was checking out all the plants everywhere, getting up in the roots, sort of tucking himself down in between the leaves. and that makes me happy. It used to spend a lot of its time nestled into the roots up underneath this piece of wood when the water sprite was in there, and of course when the water sprite left, he's been left sort of without a hiding place. The Synodontis does eat the plants somewhat as well, but nowhere near to the degree the tilapia does, so I was always able to keep on top of it when it was just the Synodontis in here eating the plants, and the my gourami actually eats the plants a little bit too, but nothing like this tilapia. So hopefully this stuff is going to be durable enough that the tilapia will not devour it, and I'll get back to having a nice lush green tank. I've got 3 pieces of Java Fern tucked in here, one sort of wedged in, a little split in the piece of wood at the top center. The pieces in the back there, that's actually 2 little pieces stuffed into a little hole. You see how there's that little hole right there, just above those roots. There's another one in the back of the piece of wood, very similar, and I've just got those kind of stuffed in there. So they might get knocked out or tugged out or something, I don't know, but we'll see. Hopefully the roots will take and will start growing into the piece of wood. This is my El Nino fern that I had purchased. I've got it sort of wedged behind that piece of rock, and that rock is actually not pressing against that at all. There's sort of a gap between the 2 rocks, so the root ball is below that gap, and then the stems just sort of stick up through it, so that should hold it in place without pinching the fern at all, and that should take and start growing as well, I hope. We're going to say I don't really do well with plants most of the time. Another piece of Java Fern, I just sort of have the roots tucked up underneath that piece of wood, nothing more seriously attached than that. And then last but not least, I've also got that sort of root chunk from an Anubias wedged kind of under that rock, kind of under the wood, and we're going to see if that survives and grows. You can see by the piece of Anubias back there, it doesn't do real well in my water, or at least in my conditions. I think some of these plants just need more nutrients than I give them. I don't do tabs or ferts or foods or anything like that. I keep my tanks as simple as possible. All I got to do is feed them every day. I don't have to worry about feeding my plants or anything else. And of course the result is I can only keep some of the most easy to maintain, simplest plants there are. And every time I try to do some kind of sword, they always die off because they need more nutrients than I give them. Even with this planted substrate, it doesn't seem to be enough. And I also forgot, right there, I got another little tiny Anubias that I tucked between those 2 pieces of rock, so maybe that Anubias will take and start growing as well. So again, these are all nice, easy to maintain, you know, low need, low light type foods, low requirements for their food. Hopefully they will start rooting in and growing, and I'll have a nice lush green tank again. I really don't care if it's just the big simple plants like the Java Fern, as long as I've just got nice thick lush green plants. They don't have to be anything special or fancy. I just like having that vegetation going on in there. I think it completes the tank and makes it look nice and natural. So that's about it. Make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss anything else I got coming up. I've been trying to get caught up on a lot of stuff I need to get done down here. So hopefully today I will get several videos shot and you don't want to miss any of them. So thanks again for watching this one. I'll see you real soon in the next one.